Welcome to Highlighted, a Life Church Midweek Podcast. Here we're on a journey to look for ways to make our sermons more practical in our everyday lives, and we want to inspire you to live out your faith every single day, not just on Sundays. In each episode, we highlight our sermons and our ministries to see how God is working in our church and through our community. And I would say in all ways, I'm joined by the greatest pastor in the world, but it's been like a month.
I know.
Right? So we had our great Easter basket. It's not called that anymore.
No.
I almost call it. It's Easter Fest. We had Easter Fest.
Yeah.
This past weekend, so we were busy getting stuff ready, so there was no episode last week.
The ghost of Easter past right there.
Yeah, the week before, it was you and Pastor Baba.
Right.
And the week before that, it was me and Steve.
Yeah.
So it's been almost a month since we got to sit here.
We're back, baby.
Yeah, we are.
I like it.
And because we're back, not because, but we're also in a new series too.
We
so
are.
The last time we were on Highlighted, we were talking about being fully devoted, and now we're talking about
being washed. Yeah.
And they kind of play hand in hand, which is interesting. And I feel like, people get mad at me. No one gets mad at me, but I feel like people get mad at me because I say that all the time, that everything is always building on itself. And, if we can allow Jesus to take us through this washing process, it's a lot easier to be fully devoted to him in our lives. And this past Sunday, we talked all about letting Jesus wash us instead of just, like Pilate washing his hands, doing it for the sake of putting on a show.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting. So if you weren't here Sunday, or pause, go listen to Sunday, go watch Sunday. But at the end of Sunday service, before we even break down anything from Sunday, we had a really cool thing that we did was you had little cups of dirt. I almost said little buckets, but that would have been a lot of dirt.
It would have been a lot of dirt.
And, right, so everyone came up with their dirt and they tossed it in Jesus's water and not in Pilate's water.
Yeah.
And what I thought was so cool was that, to get to Jesus's bucket, you had to walk past Pilate's bucket and you had to look at the clean water. And you were the first person, right, that went through. So the first couple people didn't really get as good of a picture as I think the last person would have gotten, because by time, I was up there singing a song, so I didn't pour my dirt in the bucket, but at the end of service, I went over and I looked at the bucket. It was disgusting.
Yeah, it was nasty.
And, you could kind of see it from the back of the room. You could kind of see it as you're dumping up and pouring your thing, but by the time service was over and everyone was gone, that thing was just sitting stale water. And all of that dirt started to just soak in. And it really painted this picture of what Jesus does for us.
Yeah.
And, it's not like he's just taking our cup from us and just tossing it that way.
Right.
But he's taking it for himself.
Right.
And he's putting it in his water. And the fact that he's willing to even do that. And, sure, we started with a little bit of dirt, but, everyone's dirt adds up to a lot of dirt.
Yeah.
So if you weren't here Sunday, there's a really awesome illustration at the end with just a cool action step that we could take, saying in faith, we're going to give this over to Jesus. But also knowing that it's a lot dirtier than you think it is.
Yeah.
Right? And our lives can become a lot dirtier than we think they are and that we give them credit for, because we like to look at it from far away.
Yeah.
And we like to say, oh, yeah, that's all. Jesus got it. It's in his bucket over there. You see that? Yeah, it's over there. But when you walk up to the bucket, and even just a little bit of dirt at a time, filthy rags.
Right. What's crazy, because we say this thing like Jesus washes my sins away, and that is true in the sense of like it's a nice thing to say, and it makes sense in what Jesus does, but he does so much more than just wash our sins. He actually takes on the weight of that sin. He took on the weight of that sin on the cross. And so Good Friday's coming, right? And that's what's going to happen, in that day from the week in Jerusalem, Holy Week. He's going to do all this stuff, but the like right close to the cross, the closest moments to the cross, he was taking on this dirt, right? And his water was actually clean. That was the thing, And this is the thing. He's got a bowl of clean water, and his hands are already clean, right? He physically, he's not dirty. He's not a dirty guy. He probably hadn't even been in the dirt that day. And he's like, bring me a bowl of water. I'm going to do something that the Jews do. I want to make sure they understand what is happening here. And so he pulls this basin of water. He's not even a Jew, but he's going back to some Jewish ways to make a connection with the people. And he puts his hands in the water that's clean. And when he pulls it out, there's no change in the water. right? And this is how many of us come to Christ at a certain point. We come to Christ and we have this drastic change in our lives, but slowly we fade back in and we say, okay, I'm washed by the blood. But then we go in to wash and we come out, the dirt's still on us. We're still walking around with the nasty, right? Because we have this idea that Jesus is one way, right? And we've created our own Jesuses that we've traded for the real Jesus that took on the actual dirt of our sin, the actual nastiness of our sin, both through the washing of our feet, right, and the saving of our souls. First, when we get fully washed over by the blood, when we get saved, and then when we repent, like this is a foot washing moment, right? And we didn't get to any of that, but that's the point. Like that's the point of what's happening here. He's reminding them that, this is what I do for you, and by the way, you need to do this for other people. You need to be willing to serve them in ways. And Jesus was willing to serve us in this way, and that includes taking that dirt on, which for each one of us could have been an entire bag of topsoil, right? I used a little cup for every person, but the reality is that and we continually have to go back to be cleaned, because I continually dump that dirt into Jesus. Now here's the crazy thing. So not only does he take it on spiritually on the cross, but then they lay him in a tomb. And while it was a little different then, because it was probably more like a cave style of tomb, our current understanding of graves and that kind of stuff is that, we put something down into the dirt and then we pour dirt on top of it. And so he's going to come back out of that dirtiness, right? He's going to come back out of that crucifixion and taking on that dirt, and he's going to come out different. And by virtue of that, we can be different. And so it's an insane story when you really kind of open it up and begin to think about it. But I think probably the most influential piece of this story to me is that we often miss that Barabbas was one of the first people to experience the grace of Jesus. Now, he didn't get saved. I'm not saying he got saved. Maybe he did later. I don't know anything about Barabbas other than what, I've studied. I don't know. We don't know anything about him after that moment. We know he walked free. We know prior to that he was an insurrectionist. He was a prisoner of Rome because he had in some way come against Rome. His name was Jesus Barabbas. We know that. And we know that he was likely a zealot. So at that time, there were multiple factions of Jews, and one of them was the Zealots. And the Zealots were kind of like, we're going to do anything to get free from our oppression, right? They were actively looking for the Messiah at this time. How they missed Jesus, the Messiah, I don't understand. But they were actively looking for the Messiah, and so these guys were willing to wage war to make things happen. And that's what they wanted the Messiah to be. So the people that were shouting, "Give us Barabbas," were doing that in part because they saw someone who was standing up against Rome, right? He is a murderer, but he murdered Romans. And that's got to be okay, right? That's because so of course the Messiah is going to come and do that. And yet they had another choice. And I think for us, we do the same thing. We have this choice in Jesus, and this is where I think sometimes we really struggle. So we want a Jesus who washes us and cleanses us, but is also okay with us watching that television show, is also okay with us being in a relationship we know we're not supposed to be in, whether that be heterosexual, homosexual, doesn't really matter. Any relationship we're not supposed to be in. We want a Jesus who, at the end of the day, fits our narrative instead of us fitting his. And that's not what it means to be washed. That's more like us coming out of relationship with him and saying, okay, we're going to create our own God here that fits our needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard this said one way. Is like you could take 3 plates, right? And you have a fancy piece of china, you have an everyday use plate, and you have a paper plate. They all have different uses, right? And right? If you're doing a cookout, it's a lot easier to just grab those paper plates, throw them away when you're done. You have a lot of people coming over, no mess. Or the fancy china, like you can't be having that at the cookout because like what if it gets broken? It's expensive, this and that. And then you have your everyday plate, right? The one you throw in the microwave, the one you make dinner on every day. And, and our lives become a lot like these, like with our relationship with Jesus. If we take the paper plate and our relationship with Jesus is the paper plate, it's just something we could throw away.
Yeah.
It's not really there, right? We're saying that we can use it, but eventually it's going to crumble.
Yeah.
Or like that fine piece of china, right? It's all for show. It's all what Pilate was doing, washing his hands, right? We kind of just put it in the cabinet. We show it off at Christmas, Easter, fancy dinners, but we don't use that every day.
Yeah.
We don't build a relationship with that plate, but our everyday plate, right? It's with us with the messy. It's with us with the clean, with the dirty. It's been through the dishwasher 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And it's that everyday plate that we're looking for.
Yeah.
And in our lives, and when Jesus washes us clean, right, with this dirt analogy that we used on Sunday, right, it's an everyday thing. Right? The dirt in our lives doesn't just go away like that, right? I wish it did.
Right.
And a lot of people can claim that it does, and a lot of people can strive for that, and we want to strive for that, but we're not perfect, and we fall short of the glory of God. So every day we're dumping new dirt into Jesus' bucket. And he never tells us, hey, that's enough. Stop.
Right.
But each day he's like, yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Give me more.
That's a great point that he never tells us enough.
Yeah.
Right. He never tells us, okay, guys, it doesn't mean you can go do whatever you want. Right. We're not saying that. We're not justifying sin here. What we're saying is that in those moments, he doesn't say to us, hey, listen, I need to cleanse this water. I need to get a new bucket of water. And y'all can't bring any more dirt.
Yeah, even if it was just a day. Give me a day. I'm going to go get a new bucket. Right. I'll be back tomorrow.
But it's not. No. He's right here with it. And so, absolutely, it's really the idea behind the whole series, because we touched on this the first week when we talked about pride. We talked about Jesus washing the disciples' feet, that basin was nasty. And it wasn't just dirt, it smelled bad. Right, there was also animal feces and other things that would have been on the the sandals and the feet of the disciples, because it wasn't like they just cleaned it up. Right, nobody walked around with bags behind their donkeys because they need a pretty big bag. But the point being that basin didn't stay clean. It didn't get too dirty. And then he gets to Judas, who in my opinion, he had every right to be like, nah, this is too much. You got to go. And instead, he washed his feet. And then he gets to, and then we're here, and Pilate washes his hands now, and the water's still clean, and there's nothing. Yet we're harking back to this idea of Jesus washing feet instead of him washing his own hands. And we're reminded that this Jesus is different than the kings and leaders of our society and of our world. And we meet Jesus in this incredible way where now he is going to literally trade places with a man who shares at least his name, but was guilty, and Pilate knew it. Pilate knew he was guilty and still tried to wash his hands of it. And the crazy thing to me is that the crowd shouts out, and I think we all have been a part of mob mentality at least once in our lives, and we kind of understand this. We say things before we think through them, and so like there's this challenge right now going around, the USC ice bucket challenge or something like that. It's been going around for years in different ways. When I was a young person, it was for ASL, but right now USC speak something or other, and it's an awareness for mental health is what it is. And so my kids get challenged to do it, and they're like, oh, we're going to do this when we get home. And I was like, can you tell me what it's about? And they were like, I was like, I want you to tell me what it's about before you do it. You're talking about raising awareness for something, you don't even know what's going on. Right? And so this mob mentality happens, right? They didn't even really realize what was going on. And yet now here they go. They start to scream, crucify him. Pilate washes his hands and says, blood's on your hands. And they go as far to say, absolutely, we'll take it. Okay? Which they have a right to do. They have a right to say, we'll take the guilt of his blood on it. They didn't know what they were saying, but they have a right to do it. But then they're like, also our children. Like, that's what happens when we try to perform. A generation loses their connection with Christ. A generation loses. When I try to perform my relationship with God, the next generation is going to pay a price for that.
Yeah, and what's crazy about this mob mentality that the people took on, it's you kind of highlighted on Sunday. It's not like Barabbas just stole some bread and was wrongfully locked up, or like they didn't just take a shoplifter, or like they took a violent criminal.
Right.
And they were like, do we take this guy that we were just in the street saying Hosanna?
Right.
Right. We were laying down palm branches so we could walk on clean ground, talk about washing feet, and like not even the donkey could get dirty.
Right.
And then they turn around and say, no, give us the violent criminal.
Yeah. Come on, we'll take him.
We'll take the violent criminal.
We like our odds.
And, a lot of times we do that. And we take the thing in our life that is violently eating at us, violently breaking us down, breaking down our family, breaking down our relationships, tearing our life apart.
Ooh, that'll preach.
And we're saying, yeah, kill that guy.
Right.
Kill the innocent guy that we just praised, right? Kill the guy that on Sunday we sang songs about. We heard a message about. But Monday's coming around, I need this, I need that. Forget that guy. I want Barabbas. And not only do we become like Barabbas, right? And we get the grace that Jesus takes our place. But we also are like the people choosing Barabbas.
Yeah.
And so we kind of play all three of these characters in the story. And we're like Pilate, because we'll go through the motions.
Yeah.
We'll do the religious things. We'll do the thing. Oh, yeah, my small group is praying for me. It's okay. I'm going to wash my hands. Nothing's wrong.
Right.
And then we're going to be like Barabbas. And when Jesus takes our dirt, when he takes our guilt, our shame, we can walk free.
Right.
But we're also like the crowd.
Crucify
him. Give us the violent criminal.
Yeah.
That's going to tear apart, this city, our life. We don't know the repercussions of that.
Right.
He could have gone on a rampage that night. He's like, I'm out. I'm getting revenge.
Yeah.
And, I don't care who gets in my way. You could have been one of the people that's like, I voted for you to get free. Don't hurt me.
Matter.
It doesn't matter. And sin is like that, right? Even if we have this recurring cycle of sin, it's like, oh, this is familiar. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not going to get burnt out. I'm not going to do this or that. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's like a truck. It's just gonna boom and bulldoze.
It's gonna barrel through.
Yeah.
It always wants to destroy your family. It always wants to destroy you as an individual. It always wants to destroy your friends. It always wants to destroy every aspect. Right. That's the purpose of it.
Yeah.
That was what the enemy intended. The day that he tricked Adam and Eve. Right.
Yeah.
The day he lied to them. That was the intention, was destruction. And that's exactly what sin does. And you're right. They chose just like we do. We may as well yell, crucify him every time we find ourselves in those things.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've said this 1,000 times before, just in this episode, but the grace of Jesus is one that says, keep pouring your dirt in my bucket.
Yeah.
And there's never going to be a day that, as long as we're here, that he's not taking our dirt for us.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, it's not a free pass to live our life how we want, but it's a love like no other to know that I can mess up countless times. I can fall short 1,000,000 times, and I can still pour my dirt in his bucket, and he's going to take that from me.
That's good. I was watching a video earlier today about a lady who she is talking about. She's giving her testimony, and she says, I cheated on my husband. I cheated on him. And he had every right to be like, all right, we're done. Hit the road. You're finished. She said, but I'd also watched him live this life like I'd never seen somebody live. Still cheated on him, but I'd watched him live this life like nobody was living, right? Forgiveness and grace. And she said he stood there and he just looked at me when he found out. And he shook his head a little bit. He turned and walked away, came back, turned and walked away, came back. Like just in that moment, not that he left her. And he said, listen, I don't know how not to love you. And she kind of stops there for a second. She starts to tear up, and she was like, and that incredible grace is the only thing that saved my marriage. But let me tell you why I tell you this story. Because Jesus says the same thing to us. I don't know how not to love you. You can be the biggest bonehead, and Jesus says, I don't know how not to love you. You can be the worst person in the world, and Jesus says, I don't know how not to love you. And that's the point here, that we can bring that dirt and we can say, here I am, Lord, wash me. And he can wash us clean. And that bucket, every time we look at it, it gets dirtier and dirtier, right? Because he's taken that on. He is forgiving that. He is and tossing that aside, knowing us, still bringing forgiveness, knowing we're probably going to do it again, or we're at least going to sin again if we don't do the same thing. And yet he takes it on. And so.
Yeah. And I mean, I love Easter, and like we're always celebrating the resurrection. We're always looking at that and like, but it's a special season.
Yeah.
And I love this series that we're in. I'm sad that we're wrapping it up this week, but I'm excited. I'm excited for Resurrection Sunday.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. In case you didn't know, the man that they picked instead of the violent criminal, he goes and he dies, and then 3 days later, he's back up again. So it was a lose-lose situation for Rome here. Not only did the guy they picked not actually die,
right,
but the guy they picked to get free, he's out there causing havoc in the streets. Maybe we don't know. Maybe
he could have been.
Could have been.
Maybe he took.
Maybe they didn't even release him. Maybe they didn't even release him.
They picked him up later.
They picked him up later. No, but in all seriousness, man, I love this series. I love just this idea that Jesus washes over our life in every aspect, right? Not just our hands to make them clean, but he takes us over and he makes us a new creation in him. And I'm just excited to celebrate that this Sunday. And if you haven't been inviting anyone for Easter Sunday, man, like, what are you waiting for? Like, this is the one Sunday a year that I feel like anyone you ask will be like, all right.
Yeah.
All right. Like, you could take the most violent criminal, Barabbas, invite him to church. And Barabbas is like, I imagine him. He's like real scrappy sounding. I'm not going to Life Church with you.
But maybe on Easter.
But Barabbas, everyone goes to church on Easter. So, all right, I'll give it a try. Hey, it's that guy Jesus. It's that other guy Jesus that how does he hear? No, but
what happened on that day?
It'll be a lot of fun, and we're super excited. Good Friday service this Friday, 7 p.m. That's going to be a lot of fun. Just remembering, looking back. It's also going to be an awesome time of fellowship together. We'll be hanging out. We're going to be doing some worship. It's not going to be a long night. I know like a lot of people are like, oh, it's a long night. But I'm going to church on Easter. I don't need to go. It's going to be different. It's going to be fun. It's going to be refreshing. So come Good Friday. Come Easter Sunday, man, and invite your neighbors, your family, your friends, whoever. Barabbas.
Yeah, go find
Barabbas,
a stranger,
if you're
just
listening.
Be like, come sit with me.
Yeah, and we have little cards. You could come today to the church right now. Just come knock on Pastor Josh's window. Be like, I need invite cards, and we'll get them to you.
I would tell that story.
That'd be a good story.
Like all my friends, I'd be like, you don't have people like I do. you don't understand. You don't understand.
Yeah.
You don't have people like we do. They're knocking on the window on Wednesday looking for cards to invite people to church. And so that'd be awesome.
So this is our last little push, man. Invite someone. Even if you don't have a card, send them a text, give them a phone call. Let them know that you love them and that you want them to come sit with you this Easter. And as always, we love you, and we can't wait to see you again soon.